All right, thanks for your patience, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to Councilmember Matt Frumin's FY27 listening session. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Kevin. I'm the Communications Director for the Council Member's Office. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here this morning. Before we begin and before I turn it over to Councilmember Frumin, I do want to just go through some quick logistics. When I'm done with those logistics, I'll also put them in the chat so we can reference back to them. So I want to quickly go over those, make sure we run smoothly and everyone has a chance to be heard. This is a listening session focused on hearing directly from Ward 3 residents about priorities for the upcoming budget. Speakers who are signed up in advance and indicated that they wanted to speak will go first. Each speaker, similar to a council hearing, we're going to try to hold it to 3 minutes to make sure we get through everyone. And after each speaker, Councilmember Frumin may ask questions or offer a brief response. When it is your turn to speak, you will receive a prompt to be prompted or to be promoted to a panelist. And so if you have signed up to speak, I'll indicate when it's your turn. Please be ready to accept that invitation to be a panelist so you can be unmuted. If you're not speaking, otherwise, please stay muted with your camera off. Speakers, we encourage you to turn your camera on, but totally fine if not. I know we're all probably at home this morning. Um, if you did not sign up in advance but would like to speak, please send me a private message in the chat and I'll do my best to accommodate you as time allows. I'll be monitoring the chat and Q&A throughout the meeting. I will flag for some of us that Q&A button may be behind the ellipses. Those three dots there if you want the Q&A specifically instead of the chat. We'll hold time at the end to address questions and comments that were submitted that weren't addressed in the discussion. I do ask everyone keep comments respectful and professional. The meeting is being recorded and we will be sharing this to the council members' YouTube page so you can watch it after. Finally, if you are unable to stay for the full meeting or think of additional feedback later, you can always email us. I'll put the email in the chat. It's fruminoffice@dccouncil.gov or call our office. Again, I'll put that number in the chat. It's 202-724-8062. If you do have any questions, please, or logistics, need troubleshooting, whatever, please send me a private message. I'd be happy to help you out. For those, I see a couple of questions in the chat real fast. You'll receive the prompt to speak. It'll come up as a notification there and it'll flash in front of your screen. It'll be hard to miss, and it'll give you the choice to click yes, accept. And then how long is the meeting? We've held 2 hours, so we'll have a hard stop at noon. With that, again, if you have other questions on logistics or troubleshooting, please send me a direct message. And other than that, I will turn it over to Councilmember Frumin. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Thanks to everybody who has joined. Really grateful. This is an important part of the process where we hear from folks in the ward about what are their priorities in the budget. I think I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are in the budget process. The one piece of the budget process is the oversight hearing process, which we're in the middle of just starting to do oversight hearings of the different agencies, which are focused in part backward on how they did in the previous year and in part forward on what are their needs in the coming year. And that feeds into the budget process generally. If you are interested in any particular agency, I would really encourage you to sign up and testify so your voice can be heard in that council process. The next couple of things is the ACFR, which just came out, which is essentially the balancing of the books from the previous year to see where did everything land, how much money was left over, or how big were the deficits, and how did we perform from an accounting perspective. That came out. It's a multi-hundred-page document that came out yesterday. Looked briefly at it. It tells, I think, a generally positive story. Our reserves are almost completely full at the end of the day. it does the ACFR doesn't suggest extra money that would be able to go over into the Housing Production Trust Fund, for example, the way that happens sometimes, but still a solid ACFR. The next really big thing is when the CFO comes out with his revenue estimate at the end of February. And the revenue estimate will tell us to what number can we budget and balance the budget, because the district is absolutely required to balance the budget, and it has to balance to the number that the CFO comes out with in February. I think there is a lot of turbulence out there in the economy. What that revenue estimate is going to look like, I think, is a source of concern for all of us. Surprisingly, in the recent revenue estimates, revenues are going up, even in the context of this turbulent economy. And part of that is in Canberra, folks who are doing well are doing quite well as the stock market has gone up and other things have been going on. But that's going to be a very, very important number for all of us to see. The mayor had asked to meet with the council last week to talk about where the budget stood in her contemplation. She's now working with all of the different agencies trying to formulate her budget. She won't complete that process until April 1st is the current schedule, and lots of that work will happen once the February revenue estimate has come out. But I believe that the mayor is going to want to talk to us about her sense of the real constraints on the budget going forward. And it's a challenging time. We'll see. Unfortunately, that meeting was canceled because of the snow, but will happen in the next week or so. A different thing that will be happening in the relatively near term is based on every council member will send the mayor a letter talking about what their priorities are for the coming budget for her to take into account as she's formulating the budget. And we will be doing that. And this morning is an important part of that process, because we want to hear from you about what are the things that are on your minds and that you would like to see us reflect in that letter to the mayor, and then in our approach to the budget going forward. The challenges we face on the federal side are big, and I don't know if folks are following it, but there are disapproval resolutions in both the House and the Senate for a bill we did that decoupled our tax code from the federal tax code. It's a little complicated, but when the Trump tax cuts went through, in the ordinary course, for example, if the standard deduction is increased on the federal side, it would increase on the district side as well and have an adverse impact on our revenue, be a tax cut to district residents, but have an impact on our revenue. And we passed legislation, and many states have done this, saying decoupling various things from the federal changes in order to protect the revenue that we have, and not necessarily do a tax cut based on the same things that the Republicans in Congress chose to do, some of which were, for example, very, very favorable to the tech industry. And so we made those changes. Right now, there's a disapproval resolutions in the House and Senate, and if that was struck down, it would increase our challenges, because it would take about $250 million of revenue that we had currently projected as being in our budget for the next year out. So it would make it that much more challenging to do. As we round the corner into the FY27 budget, I have to say I feel good about what we've been able to accomplish in difficult settings in FY25 and FY26. one example is working with school communities. We were able to protect all of our school budgets in the last couple of years, and we have gotten to a place where every school has told me they have what they need. They don't have extra, but they have what they need. That's a very, very high priority for me. Um, we also have been able to strengthen the main streets and strengthen the villages, which are important institutions here in Ward 3. Um, One of the big things that has been under threat in the last couple of years is the P-Keep program, which provides free pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 in community-based organizations, and that program has played a very important role in Ward 3 in creating uh, pre-K 3 options and taking pressure off of the local schools uh, for pre-K 4. And we've frankly struck a kind of equilibrium, but if we lost P-Keep, it would be a catastrophe. It has been under siege for the last couple of years. We've protected it. Same with the pay equity fund and the child care subsidy. They've seen some cuts, but the council has been able largely to protect them. Last year, there were cuts to the social safety net that we were able largely to protect. Um, uh, and proud of that work inside of our committee. Also, we have oversight over the libraries, and we were able not only to restore positions to the libraries, which was a high priority, but also add to the circulation budget for the libraries. So the libraries came out better than they had in previous years before I had oversight over them. Um, but still, that's going to be an area we're going to want to be focused on. And the things that we have focused on in the past are going to be likely to be the things that are a major focus in this coming budget. I wish we were in a place where we could be thinking about big, bold, additional things, but it doesn't. This isn't the moment where that's likely to happen. And my job, I think, in this process is to try to be as frugal and careful with DC tax dollars as possible, but also protect and expand on key things that have made a real difference in the city and the ward. And so I'm going to be very interested to hear what folks have to say on this call. And again, it will feed into the work that we're doing going forward. I think I want to preface I'm talkative, and so I probably will have back and forth with people. But the idea is not to have an argument about something, but to make sure that I fully understand and to give a sense of how we've approached that, whatever issue is raised to date, and see as we formulate what we're going to try to do going forward in this budget cycle. So I'm going to stop there. I also will say, Kevin said a hard stop at 12, where I went on a little long. We started a few minutes late. I'm more than happy if we haven't finished with folks to hang in there for a little while longer in order to make sure that everybody feels like they've had the opportunity to be heard. And with that, I will turn it over to Kevin and we can start hearing from residents, which is what this is all about.
Great, thanks, Council Member. Our first speaker is Kathleen Gibbons. Kathleen, I have just sent you the notification. I see you're joining as a panelist. So Kathleen, whenever you are ready, you feel free to unmute and 3 minutes.
All right, am I on?
We
Sure
can.
are. Good to see you, Kathy.
Okay, lovely to see you, both Matt and Kevin. Thank you for doing this. I don't have anything significantly all prepared in advance, but I have to say I was impressed with the introduction from Matt. I think that I, like many, share the sense of tremendous priority for keeping the schools in good shape. That is critical. Also, in our area, I live in Cleveland Park. sustaining the library is critical to our overall community. And I appreciate anything that's done and can continue to be done to support that institution. Um, I would add in, and I know that Matt, you've had a role in parks and recreation and so forth. Um, I think that in the last year or so, I've noticed that our maintenance of the appearance of the city during the growing season in particular, had deteriorated. I think that overall that's a bad thing. As people look at DC and wonder if this is continuing to be a great place to live. I think that it's important for morale and otherwise to keep the city looking good, whether that's through jobs programs and doing that. But I did notice a big difference. My next thing is just I hope that the council is aware and will help all of us to be more aware of what we really think the revenue base is. As we see entire federal agencies being moved to other jurisdictions like HUD, for example, slowly but surely, we're talking about thousands of jobs that the district is losing. And I think that we are, some of us, rather confused about just how, badly, are our revenues being really dinged. And we need to have confidence that the council, as you say, will be frugal, and will be practical about what can and cannot be done. I think that in the past we've talked a little bit about the fact that accountability for agencies, particularly Department of Behavioral Health and other departments that have to do with housing and mental health services, under a kind of housing first type of framework, that these are tremendously expensive programs, roll them all up and, they approach something like a third of the budget. And there really is no accountability that comes from the outside. There are mechanisms for internal complaints and so forth, but not for actually, finding fraud and such. I don't think that I need to take up any more of your time. Those are a few priorities. Anything else, I'll, as you know, get in touch with you and throw in.
Okay, well, let me just check through a couple of them. So on schools, rest easy that is a very, very high priority for me in Ward 3 and citywide. But and I'm again proud of what we've been able to accomplish. Libraries, the Cleveland Park Library, like MLK is the flagship. Next is Cleveland Park. Like when you look at the numbers of people using the libraries and the programs, and so fully understand how important that institution is in that community, and the libraries are in other communities as well. Going to be a high priority. Parks, we've done better at maintenance in schools in the last couple of years than we had previously. I don't think we've gotten there on parks in the same way. We have a couple of parks that really need some love in Ward 3, and DGS is focused on it now, and I need to make sure that it's covered in the budget, that the money is there to do the things that we need to do. Again, a super high priority for me. Youth sports is very important. I'm serving as the co-chair of a task force that the Federal City Council has put together about how we can work better and get more jurisdiction over land already held by the National Park Service. So there's a ton of opportunity on the park side, but I think you're 100% right about those kinds of amenities are the things that bring and keep people in the city. The revenue base is, I watch it very, very closely. The council budget office does monthly reports. The office of the CFO does monthly reports. It has been surprising how resilient our revenues have been, but the mix is different because of all the things that have been changing. A lot more of non-withholding income. So that's, very high income people, maybe partners at law firms. That's not that's a different kind of income, and those figures have gone up, as have capital gains taxes, because the market has been gone up so much. And so those are volatile. you can't count on those over the long term. So I assure you, watching it closely, want to be sure that we're realistic. So far, it's been pretty resilient. Thank you very much, Gabby.
Matt, if I could say one other thing. The tax burden for all of us will go up slightly when the sales tax goes from 6 to 7%, which I think is scheduled to happen in October. I do hope that there is sensitivity on on the council that further increases to tax burdens generally need to be weighed carefully. We pay a good chunk, and anyway, thank you.
Message received.
All right, next up is Ann Phillips. Ann, if you'd like to join as a panelist and unmute yourself, you can feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Mute. I'm unmuted now. Thank you very much. Thank you for the overview. That was very helpful. And I concur 100% with being frugal with the tax dollars that we have. And of course, with Congress in last year's budget, I think, or this year's budget, 2025, did not allow us something like $1 billion of our own tax money for our own budget. So if there's an update on that, that would be great. My questions for your thoughts for you are focusing on, and I'm pleased you say we're not going to have big new projects, but focusing on implementation and oversight. The stadium project and the other sports arena, I think it's Capital One, is of great concern. A lot of the protections that I know you and other members of the council wanted written into the contract were not included. So it takes money, time, and energy to provide good oversight of the implementation. And I'm, of course, concerned that the big money people are going to cost us, the taxpayers, a lot of money. Another element about being frugal is on maintenance of contracts that are in place. One example, and this is a specific example, the parks were mentioned. After 2 years, I got a new tree planted in my tree box, which was great. I think Casey Trees did it, and they were supposed to come and water this new fragile tree for a year, especially during the hot summer. They never came. I watered it. I think it's living. But again, this is implementation and oversight of contract, because it's a false economy if you don't hold these contractors accountable for what, as I understand it, is their responsibility. Another thing in terms of housing, I know affordable housing is a concern for a lot of folks. There was an article recently, I think it was in the Post probably, about the DC Office of Tax and Revenue, where properties were being confiscated for a small amount of taxes, property taxes that were owed. We all have to pay our property taxes, but this affects largely people not in our ward, but across the river, elderly people, and so on. I personally experienced this dysfunction from the Office of Tax and Revenue when I was living overseas and suddenly got a letter out of nowhere that my house was going to be auctioned off. And this was horrifying, as you can imagine. But I thought, and this was over 10 years ago, but I thought that had been resolved. According to the article in the Washington Post, this is still ongoing. So I'm wondering who is looking at what the Office of Tax and Revenue is doing. Their timely notification of people, to people, of small amount of taxes owed, and so on. So again, to pull this together, implementation and oversight are my key themes. And thank you so much for doing this.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ann. On the tree, I hate hearing those kinds of stories, and thank you for raising it. But I have heard similar kinds of things, and the follow through is critical. I do try to do aggressive oversight in the committee that I chair, and in committees that I play a role on, and but that is a key function for the council. On the $1 billion, I'm going to take just a second to talk about the $1 billion because I think there's a lot of folks, it's a little bit of a mystery because you heard a lot about it and then you didn't hear about it. And part of what happened was, the Senate said fix it, President Trump said fix it, the chairs of the relevant committees on the House side said fix it. And the House didn't fix it. And the reason the House didn't fix it is because the Freedom Caucus and Andy Harris opposed it. I think it might have been an Andy Harris staffer who put it in the first place. And Mike Johnson wasn't going to take on the Freedom Caucus while he was trying to get Trump's big bill through. And so we got stuck. At some point, folks realized that even if we were capped at FY24 levels because we were being treated as an agency like any other agency, the continuing resolution also allowed agencies to exceed their 24 budget by 6% if they had the money. And so we were able to do that. So we were able to spend 600 million of that billion despite this continuing resolution and consistent with the continuing resolution. So that turned the gap into more like 400 million. And then some of that is money that got rolled over to the future years. Some of that was saved by hiring freezes and other kinds of things that were done in the last third of the year. And ultimately, we were able to make our way through it without residents feeling it acutely. People in agencies felt it acutely because they couldn't fill positions and people were, had to operate like one-arm wallpaper hangers. But we were able to navigate our way through. This thing now on the decoupling that I talked about in the opening is another kind of problem like that could have $1 billion impact or $850 million impact over the course of the financial plan. So our headaches from the feds continue. I do think we've done okay at navigating through it so far. On the stadium, yes, we got to keep our eye on this very closely. I was very concerned about getting commitments, accountability for delivery of the housing, which is where the city is going to get its money. And they were adamant that I was surprised and troubled by it, which is why I voted against it the first time and made another very strong push through before the second vote. It was clear it was going to happen, and I ended up thinking that it's better to vote for it on the second vote and keep the door open with the commanders going forward than to have a symbolic vote against. People could second guess that call, but that was the decision that I made in the moment. And we need them to deliver the non-stadium portions of this whole agreement. And I promise you, I will engage in acute oversight to try to make that happen. So with that, I think we'll turn to the next person. Thank you for your input, Ann.
All right, and Anna, Hayes, and Ruth, I don't see on here, so we can come back to them if they happen to rejoin. And so let me go down our list here to our next person, and that would be Mindy. So Mindy, I'm now going to send you that request. Yep, we can hear you whenever you're ready.
Oh, for God's sakes. Fantastic. I just sent my question to Q&A. I'm very concerned about safety on our buses. I ride them all the time. We have mentally ill people. I'm not castigating them at all, but they can yell and scream on the buses and gesture quite wildly, and that can be frightening. We have a number of people who don't know what the idea of public space is, see this as their living room, and again are yelling and using their cell phones to broadcast to the world. I know that bus drivers are not to intervene unless it really gets violent. And I don't know what can be done, but perhaps the local people who deal with transportation would have some ideas. It is not pleasant to ride our buses anymore. I've lived here for about 25 years. Things have changed in the last few months. I live here in DC, Ward 3, lived on Connecticut Avenue, now in Friendship Heights. The problems still maintain themselves. Please help.
Well, thank you very much for that. Uh, I- well, we'll make a note of it. I mean, safety on our buses is a thing, and in our metro stations has been a thing that I have raised before. Um, my impression was, particularly in metro stations, things are better, not perfect. I had not heard this before, but we'll raise it with WMATA and ask what kinds of things can be done to try to address it. There are it's a tricky thing for the bus driver, but um, there are metro transit police, and maybe there needs to be a focus in some areas. Let me take it to heart and figure out what's the best way to try to help address this. But it's a serious problem. Pushing up, I'm the vice chair of the Transportation Planning Board, the Regional Transportation Planning Board. And our goal is to get more people on public transit, or a goal is to get more people on public transit. And we are about to agree to a significant increased funding for WMATA because it is such an important institution for us. It's got to work for our residents. So let me see what I can do on this.
Okay, just one more thing. Randy Clark is a joy. How nice that we have him.
And he really is. And he'll when I talk with him about this, he's also a Ward 3 resident for
Ah,
what it's worth. When I talk with him about this, he will take it seriously.
okay, thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Karen Abrams. Karen, if you are, I see you with us. If you are ready, I'm going to promote you and you're free to go whenever you like. I think Karen's just rejoining as a panelist so she can be on screen.
There
Perfect.
we
There you
go.
go, Karen.
Okay.
We can see you in here. You go right ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilmember Frumin, for hosting this time and really appreciate the overview that you provided initially, including kind of the timeline of what's to come and some of the highlights of things that you see as successes for us over the last year. I was hoping to highlight as a priority for the future um, some of the climate and healthy homes priorities that really got hampered last year with the rating of the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund that, as you know, is used to implement electrification and cost reductions to low-income households, and is really critical for the city to meet its climate goals. So I wanted to hear a little bit about what your thoughts were about your priorities related to securing or preventing future raids of the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund, um, restoration of funding to implement the Healthy Homes Act, and whether or not you have been approached or would consider signing on to efforts by Councilmember Allen to introduce legislation related to a clean heat standard. And I'm asking this in the context of both climate, but also affordable housing. Um, keeping people in their homes, in healthy homes, is a key part of meeting affordable housing goals. And Ward 3, we're just not doing that great in terms of meeting the goals for Rock Creek West, in terms of that we're only at 11% or so of the city's goals for Rock Creek West for new affordable housing. And so it'd be great to see us supporting some of these other means to support people for staying in their homes in a healthy way, but also achieving the city's climate goals. So that's what I wanted to raise today, and would be curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Great. So on our climate goals, one of the things that I take to heart is that my predecessor, Mary Chey, was like a global leader on this. The city got to a place where we are a global leader, and a lot of that was due to the work of Councilmember Chey. And I do want to help. I think it's the right thing to do, and I do want to help protect that legacy because I think it is such a positive and important one. Healthy homes. The way the budget works, the mayor is not supportive. And so the mayor, when she comes down with her budget, does things like rating the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund. She does things like not funding healthy homes. And there's only a certain amount that the council can do to restore that funding because, as you're going to hear from others who raise different things, there's going to be a lot of competing priorities out there. Last year, trying to rebuild the climate programs was a high priority for me. Councilmember Allen is in the lead on this, and he's trying to figure out how best to do it. And I worked with some folks, including former staffers for Mary, who had been creators of different things. And we figured out a way with chewing gum and tape and string to hold things better than the way in which the mayor left them. But I fear that's going to be a challenge going forward. I'm not sure what the legislation is that you're talking about. I haven't been approached, or if I've been approached, I'm not aware. So I want to be careful not to commit to something that I don't really understand. But the goal, the city's climate and environment goals are important to me, and I will try to contribute to protecting them in this budget going forward. I think it's going to be an interesting world. I'm not getting involved in the mayoral race in any kind of way, but I mean, we've had 12 years of one mayor and very, very grateful to her service. It's a lot of change that's coming. And so whatever happens this year, we need to make our way through this year. Next year, you could have 4, 5 plus new council members and a new mayor. So that's going to be a pretty interesting.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I can't disagree with anything you're saying. I think that the discussion around that I'm aware of has been in light of all the challenges that you're describing about just competing priorities and the lack of support from the mayor leading to her rating of the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund is we really need an alternative source of funding to that is not linked exclusively to annual appropriations. And so therefore is not in direct competition. So that's where kind of the discussion is happening. And hopefully it would be something that you could be interested in once you learn more about it.
So, I mean, there was an initiative last year that I was supportive of, but not in the center of, which was, and it's related, but not identical. Charles was looking at trying to create like a bond or bonding authority for the Green Bank. And so that instead of being subject to the whims of annual appropriations, was there something we could do on the capital side to invest in the Green Bank and that would free it so that it wasn't subject to the kinds of things you're talking about? And I was not at the table trying to hammer out the details, but I was a clear supporter of trying to go in that way. And if there are other things we can do in this space that are like that, totally support.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Karen. Next up is Tamara, excuse me, and I will promote you to a panelist now. Tamara, if you can hear me, you can either accept that invitation to be on video or unmute. Give Tamara just another moment. We can come back to Tamara. I see her on. She may be having Zoom issues. I have Meg McGuire marked down next. So Meg, I will go to you. You're free to accept that invitation to join on video or just unmute. And I think Meg's joining right now.
Good morning.
Hey, Meg.
Thank you very much, Council Member, for having this session. It's very helpful. I understand that you are now in charge of DIMPED in terms of oversight. Is
I
that
have
correct?
oversight over DEMPED. I'm not quite in charge.
Wow, that's big. And I hope that you will really drill down on DHCD. The return of the LIHTC credits was astonishing, and I don't think any of us really understands what went on. I've read the city paper article about that, but it's not at all clear. Thank you also for your letter to the Zoning Commission about reopening the zoning cases on Wisconsin Avenue and Connecticut Avenue. We just cannot settle for trickle-down housing. And by giving away, as matter of right, massive amounts of development rights along those two corridors, we are foregoing the ability to reposition ourselves down the line as circumstances change. It's really important that communities always have some leverage in terms of what gets built in their communities. And I'm not talking about obstructive lawsuits or whatever, but we can't just depend on quantity of new housing to produce affordability. So the budget request that we would make of you is to consider some set aside for Housing Production Trust Fund and LIHTC credits for those parts of the city, like Ward 3, that are woefully behind and woefully lacking in true affordability. Right now, if you are, if you work at a grocery store or a barber shop or you're a childcare worker, you cannot live in Ward 3, really. And that needs to be rectified. We need to have incentives for developers who are going to get massive amounts of development rights to, in fact, produce real affordability, not just trickle down IZ. So I hope that you will really monitor this and consider introducing in the Budget Support Act a set aside for areas like ours, just as the HANTA program is, in fact, a tax abatement set aside. And that's now being used for the first time in Ward 3 by Donahoe in the Garrison Street project, which is great. So let's really get serious about affordability in Ward 3. I'll stop there. And
Okay, so yeah, I have oversight over DEMPED. This is for others who are watching. When Kenyon McDuffie resigned, and then we needed to choose a replacement for him, but then the chairman had to distribute the things that he had oversight over to other council members and committees, and he put DEMPED in my committee and the Office of Lottery and Gaming. And it's a lot, actually. And everybody is busy with lots of things. I'm very glad to get it. Somewhat honored to have gotten it because I think of it as a vote of confidence. On DHCD and on the loss of the LIHTC dollars, I mean, what happened was they'd assigned LIHTC dollars to different development projects, and then it became clear that those weren't going to happen on time. And then they didn't have other places to assign those that could be completed on time. And the failure, in my opinion, is of an early warning system where if there was going to be a risk that we could lose these, that should have been clear earlier, and a pivot to reassign them may have been able to happen earlier. So there was a hearing on this. I and others pushed on that. Now on the LIHTC side, because of rules that the Trump administration has changed, we had come to a place where we no longer had bonding authority for LIHTC because we'd hit the cap.
Right.
And then we just got to where we weren't at the cap. And then the rules changed that made it, allowed us to have more LIHTC bonding authority than we had previously had. And so we're in a good position on that and need to use it wisely. I hear you. I mean, the challenge is folks are not coming forward with projects in Ward 3 that call for LIHTC. Somerset has got a project, and I would very much like to see them be able to succeed at that. The ANC 3E has done a lot of work to try to facilitate more investment. All the ANCs have, but ANC 3E particularly focused on the Wesley case that you may be aware of. So there is an effort here. It is a challenge. Somebody talked about us being at 10% of the 1900. Half of that is the Listener Project that when I was chair of that board, we were able to make happen. Let me take on board the idea of a set aside. I mean, everybody wants to see these projects, and so building a 7 votes for a set aside in one ward is maybe, but it might be tricky. And you wouldn't want it if there were no projects that came forward that you'd set it aside and it didn't get used. So I do think that this administration and any future administration would put a high priority on applications that came for projects in Ward 3. They want to do it. But let me think about the set aside piece. On the letter calls on the zoning commission to keep it open. The record's not yet closed, but the Office of Planning, at the last zoning commission set of hearings, zoning commissioners asked a lot of questions and asked OP to come back with responses that dealt with a number of different issues. And we agree that it's important, if there's going to be a significant change in what the Office of Planning is saying, then there needs to be an opportunity for folks to weigh in on the new thing that's being proposed. So I'm optimistic that they will embrace the request in the letter that has been made by folks like yourself and others. So I think that covers it. So
can I ask just one follow-up question, which is, what do you know about the WMATA plans to build their bus garage? That is a huge project just waiting to happen. When are they going to reinitiate the planning process, which they started, I think, wasn't it like 3 years ago?
Yeah, they started it, and then WMATA's finances got really badly squeezed, and they took it out of their capital plan. So it's not in their capital plan yet. Now, there's been a big effort to strengthen WMATA's finances, and I think that will happen through this budget process. And my hope is that once that happens, WMATA will feel comfortable putting it back on their capital plan, which could then trigger another round, a push for planning around those sites. You are 100% right. I mean, that's a critical opportunity, and I want to get going on it. a different one, and I want to be careful because I'm not gonna stop until everybody who's wanted to be heard is heard, but I don't want to make people go too long. A different thing is the Homeland Security site, and which at some point the federal government will move on. This predates the Trump administration at Nebraska Avenue in Massachusetts, and that also planning around that, I think, is an important thing to try to do.
Your ice rink is just waiting to happen.
Okay. Thank
We
you.
got a couple of sites that might be really prime.
I do want my ice rink. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Tamara. I see you raised your hand, and thanks so much for doing that. I'm going to send you that invite now to be promoted, so it should be coming to you now, and you should be able to accept that and unmute so we can hear from you. All right. And Tamara has joined as a panelist. So Tamara, now if you just unmute, or if you want to also turn on your screen, we should be able to hear you. And I see Tamara has unmuted. I'm still not hearing.
There you go.
There you go. We see you. Perfect.
Wonderful.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as
Cameron
well.
Ogilvy. I'm a resident of DC and a homeowner at the Van Ness North apartments. And I have a background in development and management of mixed income housing, including some affordable housing for people, in those cases, people whose incomes were less than 30%, certainly less than 50% of the AMI, the area median income. I'm very interested in, again, this upzoning without targeted investment in some low to moderate income housing. If there isn't a target for some low to moderate income housing in the zoning approval for X or Y development, such as Somerset, it's really exclusionary zoning. It keeps people who are working in Ward 3 from being able to live there. I know other people are going to say this too, but it's extremely important. And we're not talking about welfare people that are going to be a drag on the finances of the owner and developer of the housing. These are working people in Ward 3, including our bank clerks and sales clerks and restaurant staff and medical staff. And this is simply, we're not talking about welfare recipients. And an example that we are all considering is the Somerset development project and how that's being negotiated. Is that going to include a commitment to including a percentage of units, at least 20%, but not lower than that probably, that are affordable by moderate income people? There needs to be a set aside for providing vouchers to low to moderate income people in Ward 3 from the voucher program at the DC government. There needs to be one. And if there is not, what have we done? We have some power too.
Okay, shall I respond? Or did
Yes.
you have more?
No.
So on the upzoning and what should be reflected in the IZ requirements on the upzoning, I mean, what I have done is called on the zoning commission to keep it open so that there can be additional comments on that topic. I
And
do
thank
think
you for doing that.
so, but also, I mean, it does come in context. In higher requirements in inclusionary zoning are not the only tool to get to more affordable housing. And so, and in terms of the numbers do have to add up. And so it's a challenge because you can mandate something, but if economically it's not achievable, then nothing will get built. So where it lands in terms of what's the right IZ requirement, I think is going to involve a fair amount of economic analysis that I've not done and I don't want to stake out a position on. But then there are also things that we've talked about LIHTC and HANTA and other kinds of government programs to focus on trying to increase the amount of affordable housing in different projects. The Somerset project, I'm not really in the sort of guts of the Somerset project, but my impression is it's 100% affordable, and or would be if they can make it happen. That's that Somerset is an affordable housing developer, so I think that, but they won't do that because of IZ. They will do that because they'll be using LIHTC and other kinds of programs. So we have to walk and chew gum at the same time. We need realistic IZ requirements so that things get built, and we need significant supports to subsidize the provision of affordable housing and the expansion of affordable housing. And how much of it gets done through one mechanism or the other, I think remains an open question, but that is the goal. That is my goal. On the vouchers, I'll just touch it a second because you're at Van Ness North and there's Van Ness South, and there issues come up around this subject, and this is a major focus of our office. Is we need for that program to work better than it has worked, and I do want to be careful about. We had a hearing a couple of weeks. Well, I don't know, time becomes a blur, but we had a hearing last year with or was it this year? Sam Zamberis, who is the creator of Housing First. And among the things that he talked about was that it isn't great to have large concentrations of low-income folks, and that it's bad. You don't want to that we want to avoid that. So I want to be careful about quotas and things like that, because I think we need to make this work better than it has. And that's the first project. I want to be supporting people. Lots of people want to be supporting people, but we have to be careful to do it in a way that truly helps them and does not create very significant adverse impacts for neighbors.
I would agree with that.
Okay, so
thank you.
Great, thanks. We'll move to, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Margaret, thanks for raising your hand. You are next, so I will go ahead and send you that invitation now. Margaret, you should receive that. I will just say while Margaret's joining, I've sent an updated list of the speakers. I know a couple of folks have registered. I pulled the list at 9:50 a.m. I'll say, so if you did register after that, I'm sorry if I missed you, but I'm happy to add you. Please just flag that for me. We've also had a few people on our list who aren't on the call or might have missed their opportunity. I'll make sure to keep checking for them. But that updated list of speakers is now in the chat. And with that, Margaret, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you. And thank you, Matt, for holding this session and for, especially for your letter to the zoning commission. It came to my inbox last night. It was sent after 9 o'clock by IZIS, and there it was. I was very glad to see your request to Anthony Hood that the zoning commission keep the record open for cases 2509 and 2513. The Wisconsin Avenue case is 2513. I think that I was very pleased to see all the references you made to the issues that the zoning commission had raised with OP. So I'm looking forward, as we all are, to seeing how that will come out. I just wanted to add to what Meg and Tamara have said, that I think that somehow we need to figure out a way to use Housing Production Trust Fund in Ward 3. There have been a lot of affordable housing units built in other wards, often using Housing Production Trust Fund. But because, for policy reasons, I guess, Ward 3 just doesn't get them. So that was something that I wanted to raise with you, in addition to thanking you for that letter.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think I hear you on this and trying to look for tools to increase affordable housing in the ward. I think I've talked about it in response to a couple of others, so I want to thank you for your comment, but I think then move on to the next speaker.
Okay.
But thank you very much.
Thanks, Margaret. Catherine, I'm going to move to you now. If you'll give me just 1 second to send that to you, Catherine. And just sent to Catherine, so she should be joining us shortly.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much, as always. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Councilmember Frumin, for holding this. What I'm about to say is not going to be deeply surprising to you, but I do really have some things on my mind related to the threats from federal actors, including the decoupling bill that you mentioned. But also threats from local policymakers. And I think it's really important just to say that, the budget is a tool for standing on our values and for protecting the people. And so I know there's always a call for being frugal and for being careful, but being frugal tends to happen on the backs of the poor. And the poor are mostly working. When people talk about people being on welfare, most people who are on welfare are working. And we have an economic system where being a worker does not preclude you from being poor. And needing public support. And if we do not invest in those communities, we are really going to see significantly worse outcomes for the city as a whole. So the things that people are concerned about, things like riding the bus and feeling that things are out of control, or housing vouchers that appear to be causing problems in buildings. Some of this is related to the distress that people in certain income levels are facing. And so we cannot allow frugality to cause us to disinvest in communities. And your committee is incredibly important for that. And I'm really grateful to everything you did last year, some of the creative moves you made to prevent worse harms. But also last year, we cut more benefits to low-income folks than the federal government did, which is pretty remarkable. And so I want to just really encourage us not to forget about the safety net is an important investment in the economic well-being of our city. So we can't just keep retreating on homelessness services. we can't allow the healthcare cuts that happened. Again, at the local level, we had more harm to healthcare than the feds imposed on us. I don't know if folks are aware, but about 27,000 people are slated to lose all of their health care. Those are immigrants. People are out in the streets protesting to support our immigrant neighbors, and at the same time, DC is removing health care from them through the alliance. And also, the poorest families are facing TANF cuts, and we really need to be very aggressive in preventing people having the bottom fall out from under them. A family of 3 could get as little as, under the cuts that the mayor has coming down the pike and that is now in the budget, something like $200 a month for a family of 3. DC has the 4th highest concentration of wealth in the country. So we have the resources to be preventing these significant cuts, these slashes to the safety net. And, you know, if we can find a way in a year of hardship to give $1.5 billion to billionaire team owners, I know that we can certainly be more creative in how we fund getting care to the people that we know need it, because it's just not, it's not going to be workable to keep having the bottom get lower and lower and lower. That does boomerang and affect everybody. So just to close, you know, I really hope we can protect the child tax credit this year. And I really encourage the council to stand strong, keep standing strong, keep being the leaders. I wish you didn't have to be the leaders. I wish our mayor was doing it, but keep being the leaders in fighting the federal harms to the city. Don't obey in advance. Don't cut the budget in ways that are harmful to communities and that really are somewhat related to obeying in advance, like what we saw with the Alliance Healthcare program. And think bold. We have to have a budget that cares for our own people, and that includes taxing wealth. Please raise my taxes. Do what you need to do in order to fund what needs funding. I just don't think that it's reasonable, as we've had 3 years in a row of harsh cuts to the people mostly who need government support the most, government investment. It doesn't make sense that me and my neighbors in our cozy little corner really have not seen any of we're not contributing our fair share. So thank you very much. I appreciate all that you're doing.
Okay. Thank you very much. You're right. None of it was a surprise. We've been in conversation for a couple of years, and I really, really appreciate your advocacy. I think you're actually right about Alliance, that got started because of concern of what the implication would be from funding Alliance as Alliance in terms of federal implications on lots and lots of things. And then there was a pivot, and that didn't happen. That wasn't going to happen, but it was already baked into the budget. And the question is, how do we serve those folks? And that's a question that remains on the table now. In terms of safety net things, last year we were able to avert the hardship in TANF, and we have a working group DHS has a working group, and I think there's going to be a lot of focus in the next couple of months about what is it that they're talking about doing on TANF, and what's the hardship policy, and what gaps does that create. I hear you on the precariousness of lots of people who are beneficiaries of those programs. You talked about the link to work. This is become increasingly, I have been a K-12 person in education for a long time, but it's an increasing focus for us on adult workforce development, because we have some things that are working well in that space and some things that are not. But the urgency of connecting people to work, I think, is that much stronger. I think the decoupling that's being talked about, I don't know what's going to happen in terms of revenue. Uh, and everything is a moving target, and we need to see what the February revenue estimate is, and we need to see what the mayor does, and we need to see what the feds do on this decoupling. Because if they actually decouple, that's one world. If they prohibit us from decoupling and they impose a $225 million tax cut per year on us, that's one thing. And if they, but so a lot needs to take shape to figure out how it is that we're going to get to where we need to get. And in that process, I have zero question that you will be out there advocating and that I will be talking with you frequently. So for now, I want to put a pin in it, but the conversation continues, and let's see what we see when the revenue estimate comes out and what the Congress does and what the mayor does.
Thank you. Can I ask one additional question based on what you said about workforce training?
Yeah.
Does the workforce training, that as a general focus, does that also look at wages? Because just to give an example, when I was working in schools as a school social worker, I had lots of parents who were doing like trainings to be home health aides, and it was great because it got them jobs, but the jobs were still poverty wage jobs, so they were still working incredibly hard and not making a living that would allow them to pay for all their monthly costs. So I'm just curious if adult workforce training really takes wages into consideration.
And it does, because there's an effort to shape our programs to fill the jobs that need to be filled and the jobs that have a future with a path to promotion and to new things. But just taking, and there was the reference to RFK, and I don't want to get too sunk in that. I mean, there was the money for that is capital as opposed to operating, and so it is a little bit different. But if RFK were to happen, it's 6,000 jobs. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of construction jobs. We don't, and those are well-paid jobs, and we don't have the people in the queue to fill those jobs. Like, we need to have people in the queue to fill those jobs. I just was talking to somebody else about how UDC's been doing a lot of great work in training phlebotomists, which also, so you need to be strategic about what jobs you're training folks for, so that they see a path to, they earn a decent wage and see a path to for themselves. And we've done well in some places, but not as well as we need to in many other places. Parallel to that, an idea that I think about that's different, and is some kind of a civilian conservation. There's a lot of work that could be done, and it doesn't necessarily have a future, but it's work, and it puts some dollars in people's pockets and can help us achieve some positive things, like the invasive species in our forests are a real threat. Is that also an opportunity? Could we be employing people to do that, to be addressing that? So I think I should pivot and let the next person speak so we don't go too long. But Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Catherine. And Elam Khosravi, you are next, and I have sent you that panelist invitation. I believe you've gotten it, so whenever you're ready, feel free to unmute.
Hello, hi everyone. Hi, Councilmember Frumin. Thank you so very much for this opportunity. Well, I have a childcare in Ward 3, and after 11 years of providing, like being a provider in Bethesda, I opened our second location in DC. And from day one, we've been encountering like many issues. But let me start with my current issues that are with the fundings. One is the pay equity, which is kind of very important to keep our educators happy and being able to, like having them being able to serve in this industry. As a new provider in DC, I was not registered in pay equity and they put me in a wait list. And after about 9 months, I'm still on the wait list. So the problem it's creating is that it's making it impossible for me to find someone to be willing to work because they expect the pay equity rates, and a childcare, center cannot possibly afford those pay equity thresholds. And like educators are saying that we are in DC, they think like we are getting these funds and we are not providing these funds to educators, and that's why they don't want to work with us. So it has made it almost impossible to find staff. And there's no update, there's no, any prediction on when we can be, in the program to be able to be funded. And that's making it very hard for us to operate. The second thing is the subsidy. So the problem with subsidy is that, as you know, real estate in Ward 3 is extremely, the real estate costs are extremely higher than any other ward. And having the same rate for subsidy as other wards, it's just, it doesn't make sense, We are getting paid for each child as much as anyone in Ward 1 would get paid. And while we have like, I'm basically paying 3-4 times higher, like my operational costs are way higher than someone who's in other wards. I don't know if that's even possible to change, or having anything to do with it, but it's just very difficult to serve families who has subsidy, because it just doesn't make any sense. We cannot possibly afford it to serve these families, basically. And the other thing is that, as you know, again, in Ward 3, it's so hard to find a space where it can, meet all the expectations and regulations to be able to have a childcare center. And when you finally find that space, it doesn't have an outside space attached to the building. It's very hard to find a space for outside, like a playground for kids to play in, while there are multiple sites in Ward 3 that can be at least temporarily converted to a playground for these kids, and make it more safe for them to play outside rather than just walking in the community or we have to sometimes bring them to other stores, which are not really, really safe, as a field trip. But we have to bring the kids outside 2 times a day. Just imagine every single time we have to struggle because we have to measure the safety, we have to be worried about all those things to bring kids outside and finding like even when we go to like public playgrounds, we have to make sure it's safe and there's no suspicious people in the playground and making sure everything is fine for them to play. And sometimes we have to bring them back because we feel like the public playground at that time is not safe, but it's just making it very hard to operate. The other thing I wanted to mention is the bureaucracy. It took 9 months for us to be accepted in the subsidy program to be able to accept people with subsidy. I mean, I seriously don't know why it should be taking that long, but I have faced that issue with many different programs, subsidy program, even Department of Education. For anything that we want to get new license for, we have to wait for a couple months, and we have to turn the families around. We cannot accept their kids because we're waiting for these paperworks to be done. And the final thing that I wanted to discuss is the process of permitting. When I was in the process of building out the space, I realized that Department of Building and Department of Education are not aligned on what they need from a child care center. The regulations are not unified, and that created a very hard situation for us. That could have been prevented very easily if we could have the Department of Building and Department of Education come together at the time they wanted to review our blueprints and during the permitting process. And one more thing that I want to mention is that
Okay, but I mean, one more
I'm
thing,
sorry.
because I've been letting you go on, but really one thing, and then let me react.
Sure.
No, did you have one more thing quickly that you wanted to?
Just one more thing, very quickly. Yes, yes. We have faced a very main deficiency in the building, and it's the building's deficiency. And for me, as a business owner, a small business owner, there's no way to hold the landlord accountable unless I like file a lawsuit. But that deficiency is directly affecting childcare. So I was wondering if there could be any mechanism to hold the landlords accountable.
Okay, so thank you very much. I know we met at something, I feel like, and you gave me the flyer. It sounds like a very exciting program that you're putting together. And I hear you on all of these different challenges. I do think this is less about the budget and maybe more about our office supporting you as you're trying to make your way through. And we do have a constituent services team and that can help. So one of the things on a bunch of these different things, I'd encourage you to reach out to us to see if there's something that we can do. Ashley Mercer is on here, but you can find us on the web and reach out to our constituent services team. I'll take just a second. Like, I know that there is a ton of frustration out there about the snow and ice and city response. I mean, Ashley and Santiago have worked around the clock, fielding requests, making sure they get to the mayor's team, staying on it to try to make sure that they get done really, really. I know there's frustration, and and people don't want to hear us pat ourselves on the back, but I will pat Ashley and Santiago on the back in that the amount of work that they've done in the last week to try to address people's concern is enormous. And so I am very grateful for that. On the pay equity fund, want to protect it. On the subsidy level, that does sound like a policy thing that is an interesting thing that I need to think about, whether or not there can be a variance in the subsidy to account for increased real estate costs. For much of the other things, I do think we should have you get with our team, get with Ashley, Santiago, and Nora, who does education and early childhood, to see how we can help you navigate your way through this process. And with that, I'm going to turn to the next person. But thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you.
Am I right that it's like a Persian language program? Is that right?
We have a multilingual program. We offer Chinese, Persian, Hebrew, French, and Spanish. So,
All right. All sounds very exciting.
thank
Need
you.
to get back to the budget things and give other folks a chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, great. So Elizabeth Baden, we've had a few people before you aren't on the call. So Elizabeth, if you'd like to unmute, I've sent you that request and she's joining us now. Great.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for hosting this. This has been a terrific session and so many great points have been raised. I'm not going to go over anything that you've already talked about, but just a few things. Last year, we saw the Housing Production Trust Fund be dedicated to, as was needed at the time, to keeping existing buildings up and running and supporting current landlords. Also last year, we saw the permanent supportive housing was seriously underfunded. And in fact, there was no funding provided for individuals in that. I'm a huge supporter of the Lisner Project, and I'm glad that that received, I believe it was the first and only project to receive Housing Production Trust Fund funds in Ward 3. That was great. I'd love to see what your thoughts are on Housing Production Trust Fund and permanent supportive vouchers in the coming year with budget. Secondly, I live in ANC 34G, where the Civic Corps is located. There have been some concerns raised about whether the library and community center that are going to be a part of that project have adequate funding. And I'd be curious whether you have any insights on that. And if you, in any event, if you are able to advocate on behalf within the council of making sure that those two projects receive adequate funding within the budget. And finally, I just wanted to mention, I know that the topic of the strengths and weaknesses of inclusionary zoning has come up over in this conversation today. I don't know that that's a budget issue per se, but like you, I think that there's a lot of need for focusing on economic analysis of this program. And I think one thing that's very important is to ensure that we are introducing regular economic analysis of the inclusionary zoning program to ensure that it's not just a static set of requirements, but it can grow and evolve as the economy changes over time. We've seen the current fixed IZ arrangement divorced from current economic conditions, and I don't think that serves any of us, landlords, advocates for affordable housing, or anyone. So to the extent that, for example, in the course of performance oversight hearings, you may be willing or able to explore whether there's an appetite on the part of the executive branch to look at introducing a more evolving sort of IZ arrangement, that would be great. And thank you for all you do for us.
Okay, thank you. Very, very helpful. Housing Protection Trust Fund, I do think that it will be used for new projects in the coming year. That's what I've been told. So we'll see. I think that rent delinquency, which is part of what it was used to bail landlords out who suffered from significant rent delinquencies. I don't know that that's been solved, but what I am hearing is the Housing Production Trust Fund will be used for new projects. Also, the changes to the LIHTC program, and it's a little bit complicated, but the Trump administration changed it so that there is more LIHTC bond capacity than in previous years, and so that should be helpful. Permanent supportive housing, part of what happened, and we watched this, and Dan Passan from my team, our committee director, follows this like a hawk. Like, what's the pipeline of folks with vouchers looking to rent up? What's the pipeline of new vouchers coming? What's the pipeline of turnover of vouchers? And the assessment of our assessment and the assessment of the administration last year was that it would take this fiscal year to get caught up on the folks who were in the pipeline to be leased up, and that if we put significant new vouchers into the budget, those dollars would have been parked. And I think that the rates at which people are being leased up have improved significantly. So I think it could be close, but I think that evaluation was correct. And so I think we actually did the right thing. But I promise you, Dan is watching this day to day, both on the individual and the family side and the shelter capacity side. Do we have what we need? And that's a project for us. Funding for the library and rec center, it's got to be adequate to do the library and rec center, do them well. Of course, I will be focused on that in the upcoming budget process. IZ and economic analysis, we really do need to have a clear-eyed economic analysis of what can be supported in terms of IZ, and the numbers work. And if it may be that the way in which you increase the amount of affordable housing is through subsidy as opposed to through IZ. It's not, do we want to have enough a fair amount of affordable housing? Yes, we do. But what's the path to get there? Is it IZ or is it something different? And one of the things that can make it difficult is the costs of construction have gone up over time. So things aren't static, and costs of construction have gone up, and people may not, and rents are coming down. So when you look at the economic trends in recent months, rents have gone down, not a lot, but the trend is not to go up. The trend is to come down. Now, that's a good thing, and I want to see more of that. And frankly, as you build more capacity, as you build more housing, that can drive rents down, which is why I had such a Donnybrook with the commanders about this, because the problem on the commander side was I worry that they will evaluate the landscape and decide whether or not to build based on, if they add capacity, will they push down rents for everybody else in their complex. Their decision about whether or not to build has more factors involved than mine in wanting them as the city to build. I want them to build and push down rents. They may not want to build and push down rents. But so pushing down rents by adding housing is good, but it affects the economics of building the next building. And so we do have to be absolutely clear-eyed about that. And we can think, oh, it just makes sense and it should be higher, but you cannot have a mandate that becomes a poison pill so nothing gets built, because that defeats the purpose. And where that line is, where it's a poison pill, is above my pay grade. Or maybe it's not above my pay grade, but it requires more analysis than what has been done so far. So with that, I think I've been responsive and want to try to come in as close to time as possible to be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. All right. Next up is Cheryl Barnes. Cheryl, I see you on here twice. I assume that's a mobile and a desktop. So I'm going to send you to both the panelist invite to both those, and you can accept either one you like and decline the other. But I've just sent those. Oh, perfect. I think she got one there and should be joining us. Great. Hi, Cheryl. Oh, I think you're still on mute, Cheryl. Sorry about that.
How's that?
Oh,
Ooh,
I'm getting an
wait a
echo.
minute.
That might be because of the device you have there is also picking up your other mic if you're using two devices, but we can hear you now.
Which I don't understand because I'm not logged on with my phone.
Okay, there's a bit of an echo. It was a little better that time. Are you by speakers by chance that you could move away? No. Okay. Well, we could hear you. I'll flag if it's too much.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Cheryl Barnes, representing Chevy Chase Voice, a grassroots organization formed by residents in Chevy Chase, DC, to maybe I can have it.
So a little obviously troubleshooting here. If everyone else by chance who's not on mute could go ahead and mute, that could also be part of the problem. And if that's not it, we might have to, Cheryl, you and I try to figure it out offline, and then we'll get you back on. Let's try it one more time here. Please, again, everybody, if you're not currently muted, please do mute.
How about now?
No, Cheryl, I'll tell you what, let me follow up with you in the chat real fast. We'll go to the next person. I'll try to get you back on. Sorry about that.
Kevin, I wonder if you see two sign-ins, can you expel the sign-in that's not on the screen and see if that helps?
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually.
And expel's a strong word.
On. Okay, Cheryl, I think I just kicked your other one out. Sorry about that. If you
Thank
could
you.
try this one.
Okay, how's that?
We got
Yeah,
it.
there we did it. We solved it.
Fantastic.
Good
Thank you,
job.
Kevin.
Look at your
Wonderful.
council member, a problem solver.
Yeah, there you go. That was easy. I wish it were all that easy. I'm Cheryl Barnes, representing Chevy Chase Voice, a grassroots organization formed by residents in Chevy Chase, DC, to address issues that affect Ward 3 and 4, Chevy Chase, and specifically the 3-4G, ANC 3-4G area. One of our main concerns right now is the upzoning and densification occurring in Ward 3 along Connecticut and Wisconsin Avenue corridors. Upzoning and densification across DC has had the effect of displacing poorer residents and small businesses for decades. We already see that displacement occurring in Ward 3 as a result of recent upzoning, for example, at the Huntington and at the Avalon. Couple this issue of displacement with these issues: housing needed for residents under 30% area median income, and the high vacancy rate in DC of existing housing units. About 8%, except in recently developed areas, it's much higher, like the Wharf. We have landlord wars again. So you can solve these three issues by creating 40,000 housing vouchers for the 30% AMI and under demographic to house them immediately, using the money currently distributed to wealthy private developers. We believe that we don't need more new luxury housing in DC. It's true that the Class A rents have dropped slightly, but this is really not solving the affordability problem. We also think that naturally occurring affordable housing needs to be preserved across all 8 wards. We know that we have workforce housing in Ward 3 in the older rent-controlled buildings, and those are thousands of units that are not counted by DC as affordable housing, although we have many, many people with housing assistant vouchers living in those buildings. So, and the landlords of those buildings get tax subsidies from DC taxpayers for that reason. So those units should be counted and should be preserved for our workforce. We've spoken with teachers, and many local workers who live in these buildings in wards 3 and 4. So according to the Dump Ed website, nearly 500 acres of DC public land have been awarded or are planned giveaways to for-profit developers, with fewer than 7,000 affordable units created. Why, Councilmember Frumin, are you and the mayor supporting more new luxury apartment developments, or for that matter, any apartment development, when there is no incoming population to rent them? DC is oversupplied. Just released census data shows that roughly 820 people moved to DC a year over the last 5 years. This isn't a justification for giving away more public land to for-profit developers. If DC cared about housing its poorest residents, it would immediately create 40,000 housing vouchers to use for existing housing. Now that you have oversight of Dump Ed, can you demand that its vast slush funds are redirected to provide housing for DC's poorest? Dump Ed spends billions in taxpayer money for incentives in DC's 8 wards every year on things like $1 million to the Chichaw Lounge, a legacy grant to fix up its kitchen. In Ward 3, $262 million netted only 93 affordable units in 2023. That money could have housed all of DC's poorest, but instead, wealthy developers became even richer. On its face, this is grift. And billions in taxpayer subsidies to big developers and house DC's poorest now. That's our viewpoint on affordable.
Okay, thank you very much. So on the 40,000 housing vouchers, I mean, I'd have to look at how that all works. I actually think that our current programs, that we don't have the right mix of programs, because one of the things that we use to help on affordability is ERAP, and that became increasingly the mechanism to help on affordability during COVID and shortly thereafter. But it's not, that's 6 months of assistance and you have to apply. It isn't made for that purpose. The voucher approach, where the rent is essentially fully paid, I think one wants to be careful about that, because you want to be tailored in the support that you provide. There's a couple of programs under DHS, not that bad. DC Flex, which is a shallow rent subsidy, and DC Career Map, which is also a shallow rent subsidy and attached with workforce development. I need to look at this 40,000 voucher idea, but I suspect
that's from National Low Income Housing Coalition.
Okay, so I'll take a look at it. But my I would want to, my gut is to be more targeted, and the focus is on would be on shallow rent subsidies. But let me take a look at it. The rent stabilized, one of the things that's happening is there's a rent registry that we have been asking for, and I ask for over and over again to get a sense of what are the actual rents paid in all of our different buildings. And I'm going to be pretty curious to see how our rents in our rent stabilized buildings compare to market rents. I don't want to dismiss, because I was struck a year ago that there was a report in the Post, and I follow this pretty closely, but there was a report in the Post that rents in DC had declined. And I know, and they had gone up in other parts of the region, but they declined in DC. And I know that in our rent stabilized buildings, many of our residents get the statutory increase each year. And so I have a feeling that rents in our rent stabilized buildings have gone up more than rents in the market rate buildings. And I actually don't want, in some ways, we sing from a similar song sheet. You have pointed for some time about to the level of vacancies, and I also point to the level of vacancies. But you heard me talk about it before. I think it's not just in the Class A apartments that the rent has notched down, and the delta between the rents in the district compared to the region for Class A, Class B, and Class C have closed pretty dramatically. But I think that you do want to build, you want to keep that is a reflection of supply and demand. And if you want rents to come down further, then you want to keep building. And that day, you're right, that population in the district has not been increasing. And the most recent report about population in the district was interesting in that it's, the headline you saw was it's up 2,800, but only after a downward revision for the previous year of like 12,000. And so I do think you want to build to get our supplies so that rents are more affordable. And I mean, we may have a difference on that.
Yeah, I don't think you can build your way out of the problem.
So, yeah, I mean, I think if you don't build, then you create, you contribute to long-term shortage, which contributes to higher rents. And so we may see that differently. I don't want to dispute I think we share facts, actually. The question is, what's the implication from them? In terms of, I'm not sure, 262 million for 92 units. I think that's
93.
The Lisner project, but I don't think the Lisner project got 262.
I'm saying that's how much money Dump Ed gave for incentives for Ward 3, but there are only 93 units to show for it.
You're saying that there were $262 million in incentives for the Lisner project?
No, for Ward 3.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look at it. And in terms of, I said at the outset that
I'll send you all the links I'm using.
Okay, please. So send it to me. I just got oversight over DEMPED. We will closely scrutinize everything about DEMPED. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we'll turn to our next person.
All right, thanks, Cheryl. My last speaker signed up right now is Tom Quinn. So I will promote Tom, and I will also just say if you do want to speak on camera and have not gotten to, please flag that for me so we can get to you. And then also, if you don't want to be on camera, but you have a question, feel free to use the Q&A function. It might be behind the ellipses there at the bottom of your screen. I have one question that I know Brian's has not been quite addressed there, and I've got one over email as well to get to. But if you have more, please get those in. And Tom, you should be getting the promotion request there. He just got that. So Tom should be here. There we go.
Good morning, council member. Thank you for hosting this.
Great.
My head is spinning after that last one. I'm glad someone is worried about gentrification in Chevy Chase, DC. and fascinated that a group that is fighting affordable housing is also concerned about it. I did, since we've spent a lot of time this morning not talking about the budget, I did just want to quickly express my disappointment that we're asking for more time on the Connecticut and Wisconsin Avenue zoning studies. That is the end of what has been just a years-long process. And I feel like this is akin to in the testimony of both hearings, both written and spoken, was overwhelmingly in support. I feel like this is someone going to the commissioner after a blowout basketball game and asking 5 minutes to go back on the clock. So obviously, if some substantive changes are made to either plan, it should be reopened. But otherwise, I just feel like we're extending a process. Anyway, onto my list of actual budget things. I have three things on my transportation list. It's been a frustrating that we've not had major multimodal transportation improvements in Ward 3. They're happening all over the city, so I hope we can get some stuff in the budget that delivers in 2027. The first thing on my list is something that was previously in the budget that was inexplicably removed, and that is the Tenleytown Station access study, and that was actually going to be two steps. That was going to be first the study, and then the second step was going to be the implementation. And we never even got the study done. And then, of course, the following one would be budgeting the capital money to actually implement the improvements. So at least if I understand the budgeting process, we would first need to put the money back in to do the actual study, and then presumably the following fiscal year would be the capital money to build out the improvements. So I'd love to see both of those things put back in the budget. They were in there for years. I don't know why they were removed. I think the study was like $500,000, and then the capital was estimated at about 9 or 10 million. So I'd love to get both of those back in the budget. The other two things that I would love to see that are left in the budget is to actually build out the Arizona Avenue Bridge replacement, and then the 1.5 miles of the multi-use trail on the old Glen Trolley Trail. I think they're at 100% design on that, so the design part is done. Just need to make sure that the 2027 budget includes the money to actually hopefully build it in 2027. And then the third thing that I think is not in the budget is connecting the Capitol Crescent Trail to Arizona Avenue. That's been floating around out there as an ask for years. As I understand it, ANC3D has asked for that. That would be a really significant piece of bicycle infrastructure, and also pedestrians could use that and would connect to the now nullified Arizona Avenue bike lanes. One other quick thing that I've been asking for years, and I think would be in your wheelhouse with your connection to the Department of Parks and Recs and oversight, is money to build a skate park, hopefully not just in Ward 3, I'd say specifically in Tenleytown, in proximity to all of our schools. I think that would be a great add for our teens and tweens in the neighborhood. So I'd love to see you get that in the budget. And then the final thing I just want to put a quick plug in for, and I think the Friendship Heights Alliance is going to be making some more specific requests on this, but they've been having a lot of thoughtful looks at and discussions about both pedestrian safety and public space improvements in sort of their part of Upper Wisconsin Avenue. So I think they're going to be making a specific request, but I just want to, in advance, make a plea to put some money in the budget to fund what they're going to be looking for, because I think it's important that we make some of those improvements along Upper Wisconsin Avenue. So that is my list of requests. Thank you for having this session.
Okay, great. Let me respond. Thank you very much, Tom. The skate park, like somebody joked about me and my ice skating rink and you and your skate park. That has been a mission for you for a long time, and I hear you. Let's try to figure that out. On the zoning record, I mean, my folks reached out about this, and I looked at it, and we looked at it, and the zoning commission asked a lot of questions from the Office of Planning, and Office of Planning is taking, I think, 4 months, maybe it's even more than that, to formulate their comebacks to the questions that the zoning commission asked. And the thing that I am urging is that there be an opportunity for folks to react to that. Frankly, for you to react to what OP comes back with, for the relevant ANCs to come back and be heard on that. I think that's just fair. And I don't think that it slows the boat significantly. And I, in my letter, said, I'm not talking about the substance of this. I just think procedurally, everybody's better off if there is an opportunity for comment. And so I'm sorry that you don't think I should have done it, but it just struck me simple fairness. On the transportation things, the Tenleytown multimodal, Lee Catherine is on here. That has been a mission for Lee Catherine from the start. We push for it every time. It has not gotten included. I'm not optimistic that it's going to be included by the mayor in this coming budget, and I'm not sure that that I will have the capacity to add it back in. I think on that, I think we're probably the most hopeful would be coming back with a new mayor and persuading the new mayor to include it in his or her budget next time. And at that point, the zoning should be resolved, which I think gives an even stronger case of, for whatever way the zoning is resolved, here it is, and now we need to do planning around this very complicated area to make it work better in support of our long-term goals in this area. So I will press for it. I don't want to raise too much hope about it happening in this coming budget. On the Arizona Avenue Bridge and Trolley Trail, I think that's in the budget. I think that's moving along. I think they'll be going in front of ANC 3D again with an update sometime soon. I think the expectation is that the bridge will be done. I think it's FY27 that the bridge will be done. That doing the full trail and will probably take longer than that and maybe combined with some stormwater management stuff, but I should let them roll it out. But I think that is a thing that is chugging along. I ask about the Arizona Avenue connector every time I meet with DDOT, and my impression was that is moving along. My impression in Lee Catherine, if you know if I'm wrong, I thought it was in the budget, but I thought that part of the challenge was they need to work things through with NPS because the land is complicated there and that's taking longer. But you're 100% right. The Arizona Avenue connector to the Crescent Trail, a very high priority, need to get it pushed over the line. I think it's pushing on an open door, but I do think that it is the challenge of working with the Park Service is real. Again, back on the skate park in Tenleytown, let's talk about where you think that should go. I am on this task force around collaboration with the Park Service. I know the idea of raising it got raised in some engagement we did with the Park Service a number of years ago, and the Park Service was Fort Reno. They were going to be pretty resistant to doing it at Fort Reno. If you have an idea of where it could go, let me know. I think it would be good to have one. And I hear you on answering the call for our teens and tweens. So let's try to work together on that. On pedestrian safety in Friendship Heights, I met with Natalie Avery yesterday morning to get caught up on a number of things. And this was the thing that she was talking about can there be a visioning of what traffic on Friendship and what the street on Wisconsin Avenue and traffic management on Wisconsin Avenue on the Maryland side and on the DC side, what could it look like? And I agree that's thing that we should try to find a way to make happen, and sort of made a note, and you're reinforcing it, to look at that in the budget to see if there's something that we can do to push that forward, even though almost everything else about Friendship Heights, well, things are happening in Friendship Heights, some things that stalled in Friendship Heights, but the big thing, which is the WMATA site and the Lord and Taylor site, is sort of stuck because of where we are with WMATA. I'm not sure that that's going to move in this, that there's anything to do in this budget cycle. But thinking about with the street, how we make the street work better, I think isn't, I agree with you, is something important and worth trying to pursue in the budget.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, a skate park is really about the size of a basketball court. You don't, this is not like a soccer field. It's just identify, and I think a lot of municipalities build these for $200,000. It's not a massive capital expense. It's just a matter of putting some energy into the process. So it would be great if you guys want to help to energize that a little bit. I don't think it's that heavy of a lift. So
I mean,
thank
I'm
you for that.
at Fort Reno. Reno City is below. Digging at Fort Reno is a thing that is the Park Service is against, and so let's figure out where it is you think it makes sense, and we're happy to try to be a part of making it happen.
Okay, and thank you for the remarks about Wisconsin and Connecticut. I mean, if there are substantive changes, absolutely the record should be reopened. I have no objection. I think that makes common sense. I'm just concerned. I wasn't aware there were requests on Connecticut Avenue for substantive changes. I thought it was just Wisconsin. So I appreciate the sentiment, but I just feel like we got to get to the finish line, and we're never going to get to the finish line. But anyway, thank you for, I appreciate the response on that and you being available this morning.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, that was my last speaker who had signed up. And so if there are more people on the Zoom now who still would want to speak, I know we're past noon, but as the council member said, we can keep going if needed. We do have 2 written questions that came in that we haven't gotten to, so in the meantime, I'll do that. One's from Brian, and he said, in considering the future employment possibilities for next gen in DC, technology and tech education are at the center. Would the council member support the concept of STEM training and entrepreneurship centers at Chevy Chase Community Center and Tinleytown Library, and also additional, climate, I believe that's resiliency resources at both?
So climate resiliency resources at both, yes. STEM and entrepreneurship trainings at both, maybe, but I wonder if there might be other places that would be good for that. And on that, I'm focused particularly on UDC, and perhaps the Intelsat building, if it should ever become available. There are folks who've been advocating for an innovation hub in the ward, and I really like the idea. These are things that are happening in other places, some other places in the city, but other places in the region. And so it's not, should we do things like that in my mind? It's where is the best place to do it.
Great, and I think Brian was still on the call, so thank you, Brian. And we had one person who I know wanted to join and then couldn't stay on. That was Anna Hayes, and she wrote her question in, and so I'll read it here in the Q&A. And you said you're proud DC made no cuts to schools and they have what they need. But as you acknowledge, REP keep, this is not true for early childhood education. I send my children to early childcare in Ward 3. Teachers have pay cuts. So really getting at the ECE level of funding, the pay equity fund, and childcare concerns, which I know we touched on a bit earlier.
Yeah, and I tried to be a little nuanced in that when I referred to it. I am talking about, we go around to every school and ask them, what do you need? And then we compare what they say they need in terms of changes from the previous year to what they get in their initial budget. And we then look at what's the delta. And the question is not what do you want, because everybody always wants more, but what do you need in order to function well? And 2 years ago, we tallied up how much it would cost, and then we tallied up how much our schools got in the budget from the mayor and from Chairman Mendelson's school's first editions, and the bottom line numbers added up, and they were the same, but the distribution was different, and we got our schools to agree, the ones that got more than they said they needed, agreed to give up some of that for the schools that didn't get as much as they needed. And so we were able to move dollars around so that every school got what they said they needed. Last year, we were much closer right out of the box. And so the move, it was one minor move that we needed to do in order to get to where each school got what they said they needed. And we'll go through that process again and make sure that our schools get what they think they need and insist on realism in what they ask for. Early childhood has been under a lot of pressure from the mayor, and the council has done what it could to protect it. It wasn't complete. There were cuts that came. And we worked with the various communities to try to figure out, okay, how do we do this? How can we make this work? Protecting it going forward is super important. It kind of goes to, I forget, it was early where somebody was talking about what are the kinds of amenities that bring and keep people in the district. Child care and early childhood education are really, really important on that. And frankly, last year, the mayor was menacing more cuts in that area, and I think she was persuaded that she shouldn't do it because it would have an adverse impact on our population, including losing people. And so we need to do it because it's right, but we need to do it because it's smart as well. So with that,
I think we have two more quick questions and then that's it. One is real fast. Mindy, we heard from you on the bus and we hear you. I do want to get to your other question. What's the status of the Intelstat building, and just if you have any update on that?
Yeah, so I mean, the Intelsat building is frozen. I talk with people who have stakes in the building and have urged the mayor to take an interest in purchasing the building or the site. I don't have anything new to report, but that's another giant opportunity for various things. And right now it's stuck. I'll tell you, I'll digress for just a second, because one thing that I could see in that building, I had the idea that that MacArthur High School might go there, but a different idea that I have been floating that's maybe a little like the ice rink is when the Corcoran School of Art closed, we really lost an important institution that had been a hub for the DC art scene. And, a lot of fabulous people passed through there. And I think it's worth considering, could we stand up something that felt like the Corcoran School of Art or MICA in Baltimore or the Center for Creative Studies in Detroit? Could that go at UDC? Could that go in the Intelsat building? I think there's a gap there and an exciting opportunity. So that's the kind of thing that I continue to explore on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Councilmember. I'll make you one more and then I'll let everybody go. All right, final question. There's currently no compost pickup in public schools. Would you support this in order to set a good example for students to find a way to divert methane in the environment?
I mean, I want to look at that. I mean, I like the compost program, we're part of the compost pilot, and really think it's an important thing. Is it want to? I would want to think about, okay, how much of a benefit is this to by modeling good behavior and creating an opportunity so that there's the teachable moment around doing it, and on the other hand, school operations and how it works, because you want it to. If it became a burden for schools, I would worry about it, and the idea of kids carting compost back and forth to school and storing it there, I need to get to a comfort level on that. Don't want to be against it, but also don't want to overcommit out of the box.
All right, great, Councilmember. And then I'll turn it to you for closing remarks.
Okay. Well, I see in the chat, Tom Quinn pointed out that there's a drop off by Janney, and maybe that's an approach, and maybe if that's by, I want to look at it. This has been super helpful. As always the case, the feedback on some issues pushes in both directions, but it's super helpful to hear it. It's also, the themes of affordable housing, schools, early childhood, support for early childhood education, protecting our safety net. All of it comes across loud and clear. We need to take it all to heart, sort it out, and figure out and put together our letter to the mayor with our budget priorities. I hope people who've been on this call, when they see that letter, will think, okay, I can see myself, or, I've been heard by what we go forward with. Really grateful to everybody for joining and taking the extra time so we could make sure that everybody was heard. And now looks like, I bet it's cold, but it looks like otherwise a nice day. I hope folks can get out there and enjoy it.
All right, and just a quick reminder, I put some links and resources in the chat above for follow-up. Thank you guys so much. And with that, we will close and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.